October 12, 1998, a.m. Studio Lot C, West Hollywood. The gate lifts the way it always has, slow, obedient, familiar. Morning fog hangs low between soundstages, softening the edges of buildings that have seen better decades. The asphalt is still cool, holding the night. Somewhere down the lot, a generator hums awake. A grip truck coughs to life. Coffee steams from a paper cup in a security guard's hand. The sedan turns left. It has turned left at this corner for 11 years. The driver doesn't think about it. Muscle memory takes over. The hand moves the wheel before the mind catches up. This route has been walked so many times it no longer registers as choice. It's a ritual, a groove worn into the day. Then the car slows. Because the space isn't there. Not the space, the sign. The metal placard that used to stand waist-high at the head of the parking spot is gone. No name, no laminated card, no studio logo, just a bare concrete curb and a newly painted white 15 min loading only stenciled where authority used to live. For a second nothing happens, the engine idles, the blinker ticks, absurdly polite. You can almost feel the moment stretch, not long enough to be dramatic, not short enough to dismiss, long enough for the brain to start searching for explanations it doesn't want to find. Maybe it was moved overnight. Maybe facilities made a mistake. Maybe it's temporary. The driver pulls forward, then stops again, looks around. The surrounding spots, assistant directors, department heads, a producer who arrived 2 seasons later are exactly where they've always been, their signs intact, their names unchallenged. This isn't a clerical error. This is precise. On Hollywood studio lots, geography is never accidental. Distance is data. Proximity is permission. Every inch closer to the stage, the office corridor, the executive wing, every inch closer means something, and everyone knows it even if no one ever says it out loud. Especially if no one ever says it out loud. The star steps out of the car. There's no entourage this early, no publicist, no assistant hovering with a clipboard, just the quiet scrape of shoes on pavement and the faint echo of footsteps between buildings. The walk feels longer already, though the distance hasn't changed, or maybe it has. Maybe that's the point. This parking spot wasn't a perk, it wasn't convenience. It was a signal reinforced every morning without words: you belong here, you matter, your time bends the day around you. And now, without a meeting, without an email, without even the courtesy of explanation, it's gone. Hollywood doesn't usually take power away loudly. Loud is risky, loud invites lawyers, loud creates headlines. This industry prefers subtraction, a line removed, a name shifted, a call that doesn't come back as fast as it used to, or a sign that disappears before sunrise. The star walks toward the stage anyway, because what else is there to do? You don't storm an office over a parking space. You don't demand answers over logistics. You especially don't complain when the weapon is plausible deniability. If asked, facilities would shrug. If pressed, production would say it's temporary. If escalated, someone would smile and say, let's not make this a thing. And that's the genius of it. By the time the dressing room door closes, the damage is already done, not to status but to certainty. Something reliable has shifted. A daily proof of gravity has been quietly erased. And once that happens, the mind does what Hollywood minds are trained to do: it starts scanning for other signals. Who didn't make eye contact this morning? Why was the schedule revised overnight? Why does that conversation stop when you enter the room? Repetition is identity. Showing up the same way, the same place at the same time day after day builds a sense of permanence. It tells you who you are in the system without ever forcing you to ask. Interrupt the ritual and the questions rush in. This is how Hollywood tests without testing, how it measures reaction without confrontation. The industry isn't asking whether the star is still valuable, it's asking something more dangerous. Will they adapt quietly? Will they pretend not to notice? Will they slow down, step back, push forward harder? Or will they reveal, in the smallest human ways, that they feel the shift? Because in this town, power isn't just about who's on the poster. It's about who notices the subtraction and what they do next. And as the star reaches the stage door, a realization settles in, heavier than the missing sign ever was. This wasn't about parking. It was about gravity. And gravity, once altered, never snaps back instantly. It drifts. The stage door swings open with the same dull metallic thud it always has. Inside, the air smells of sawdust, warm lights, and yesterday's sweat, familiar grounding. Crew members are already moving with purpose. Headsets crackle. A production assistant jogs past, eyes on a clipboard, offering a quick nod that feels practiced, polite, neutral. Different. The star clocks it immediately, not consciously, not yet, but something in the room feels fractionally misaligned, like furniture shifted an inch overnight. Nothing obvious, nothing actionable, just off. Hollywood tests don't announce themselves. They don't arrive with memos or ultimatums. They arrive disguised as normal days. The first test is always silence. No one mentions the parking spot, not the assistant who's worked with them for years, not the line producer sipping coffee 10 feet away, not even security who absolutely noticed the missing sign during the morning sweep. Silence is safety. Silence keeps everyone deniable. Because if no one names the change, then no one has to justify it. The star moves through makeup, wardrobe, blocking. The routine continues, but the rhythm stutters. A call time has shifted by 15 minutes earlier than usual. A script revision has already been distributed. Decisions are being made before arrival now. Small things. Individually meaningless. Together directional. Studio lots are ecosystems, and ecosystems communicate through patterns. When authority shifts, the environment adjusts before the person does. Schedules tighten, access narrows, conversations reroute. And the star is being watched, not openly, not cruelly, but with professional curiosity. How do they respond? Do they ask questions? Do they joke about it? Do they escalate quietly through representatives? Or do they do the most dangerous thing of all in Hollywood? Nothing. Because doing nothing can be read two ways, as confidence or as compliance. This is the psychological pressure Hollywood applies when it wants to know how much leverage still exists, not by attacking the work, not by criticizing performance, but by nudging the edges of routine and waiting to see if the center holds. Repetition creates control. Break the repetition. And control becomes visible, because now it has to be actively maintained. As the day progresses, the star notices they're walking more, physically, from parking to stage, from stage to office. The extra distance is trivial in effort but heavy in symbolism. Every step is a reminder you are slightly less central than you were yesterday. And here's the unspoken rule everyone on the lot understands. Central figures don't walk farther. They are approached. This is not punishment, this is calibration. Studios do this before contracts expire, before projects are announced, before leverage is tested in public. It's a private scale adjustment done quietly enough that only the subject feels it. By lunch, the star has made a decision, though they won't name it that way yet. They won't ask. Asking gives the change weight. Asking turns silence into conversation and conversation into negotiation. And negotiations reveal fear faster than anger ever could. So they eat quietly, smile where expected, hit their marks, deliver exactly what's required and nothing more. This is restraint, and restraint in Hollywood is often mistaken for weakness. But sometimes it's strategy. Because stepping back, slowing down, emotionally if not physically, is one of the few ways a star can regain control without triggering resistance. Absence has weight here, so does patience. What the studio doesn't yet know is whether this adjustment will cause the star to push harder for relevance or pause long enough to let the system feel their absence. That's the second test. And the third hasn't arrived yet. It will. Quietly. The parking spot doesn't return the next morning. Or the morning after that. By the end of the week, the absence has settled into normalcy, not because it feels normal but because no one acknowledges it. The lot has absorbed the change, traffic flows around it. Someone new parks there once, then no one does. The space becomes a gap, not a question. That's when the star stops arriving early. Not dramatically, not late, just on time. It's a subtle shift, but in Hollywood, timing is posture. Arriving early signals hunger. Arriving late signals entitlement. Arriving exactly on time is something else entirely. It signals recalculation. The studio notices. They always do. Career pauses in Hollywood rarely look like sabbaticals, they look like lowered velocity, fewer notes given, fewer opinions volunteered, meetings attended but not initiated, energy conserved. From the outside, nothing seems wrong, the work remains solid, the professionalism unquestioned. But internally, something has changed. The star is no longer feeding the machine extra fuel. This is where the psychology turns inward. When routine is disrupted, identity loosens. The star starts asking questions they haven't had time to ask in years, not about the role but about the cost of the role. What does constant availability buy anymore? Who benefits most from my urgency? What happens if I stop being the most reliable presence in the room? Hollywood trains people to believe momentum is survival, that slowing down equals fatting, that if you don't fill the silence, someone else will. But power doesn't always belong to the loudest signal. Sometimes it belongs to the one that can afford to go quiet. The pause isn't announced, there's no press release, no taking time off headline, just a gradual withdrawal from optional exposure, fewer appearances, fewer favors, a polite decline here, a delayed response there. And something unexpected happens. The system adjusts. Without the star pushing, the production redistributes pressure. Assistants make decisions they used to defer. Producers negotiate without leaning on a familiar name for leverage. The studio feels, for the first time in years, what it's like when a reliable constant becomes conditional. This is the hidden leverage of absence. Not scarcity manufactured through drama, but scarcity created by self-control. The star watches from inside the machine, still present but no longer overextended. They notice how often their name used to smooth problems that weren't theirs to solve, how availability became expectation, how expectation hardened into entitlement. The missing parking spot wasn't the beginning. It was the signal. And the pause, this slow, deliberate reduction of emotional output, is the response. The studio, meanwhile, begins its own recalculation. Because when someone stops scrambling to prove relevance, the question shifts. Not are they still valuable, but why aren't they trying to prove it anymore? That question is far more unsettling. The call comes 2 weeks later. Not a meeting request, not a summons, just a casual check-in from an executive who hasn't dialed directly in years. The tone is light, friendly, curious in a way that pretends it isn't measuring anything. How are you feeling about the schedule? It's a strange question on its face. The schedule hasn't changed in any meaningful way. Days are still days, scenes still run long, but both sides understand what's really being asked. Are you still in this the way you used to be? The star answers carefully, not evasively, just precisely. Comfortable. Not enthusiastic, not defensive. Comfortable. In Hollywood, that word lands differently than it does anywhere else. Comfort suggests choice. It suggests a lack of urgency. It implies that nothing is slipping out of reach, because if it were, the tone would be sharper. This is when the power begins to rebalance. Studios are used to managing abundance. Too many actors, too many scripts, too many hungry careers willing to run faster for less. What they struggle with is someone who refuses to speed up when the treadmill subtly accelerates. The pause has done its work. Without confrontation, the star has signaled something dangerous to the system. I am not afraid of slowing down. And fear is the currency Hollywood expects everyone to trade in. Behind the scenes, conversations shift, not dramatically, just enough. Do we still have them locked for next quarter? They didn't push back on the change. They also didn't lean in. That last line matters. Leaning in is predictable, pulling back forces interpretation. And interpretation costs the studio energy. Suddenly, the parking spot feels small compared to what's at stake. Because the studio realizes the original adjustment didn't produce anxiety, it produced independence. So the system does what it always does when resistance isn't loud enough to punish and not weak enough to ignore. It softens. Access improves slightly, a meeting is offered framed as collaboration. A future project is mentioned, not promised, just floated. The parking spot doesn't return, but a closer temporary space appears. No sign, no name, just convenience. A compromise. This is how Hollywood retreats without admitting it advanced too far. But the star doesn't rush to reclaim the center. That's the final surprise. They accept the conveniences, attend the meetings, smile, but they don't reattach their identity to the rituals. The daily route remains altered, the arrival remains on time, the urgency stays muted. Because once you felt the difference between power granted and power assumed, you don't confuse them again. The pause has rewritten something internal. Control no longer comes from being indispensable every day. It comes from knowing you don't have to be. And that knowledge, quiet, unspoken, and deeply unsettling to systems built on constant motion, is what truly changes the gravity. One more shift is coming. Not from the studio. From the star. The project wraps without incident. No blow-ups, no headlines, no visible fracture. From the outside, it looks like another successful production moving cleanly into post. Crew hugs goodbye, assistants trade numbers, the lot exhales and resets for the next machine. But for the star, something has already ended, and something else has quietly begun. They don't roll immediately into the next job. Not because offers vanish, they don't. They soften, stretch, become more conditional. Meetings end with phrases like "when you're ready" and "let's revisit this soon." Hollywood hates uncertainty, but it hates desperation more. And the star offers neither. Weeks pass, then months. Public visibility drops, not enough to spark concern, just enough to create space. The absence isn't loud, it's clean, intentional, the kind that forces people to fill in the blanks themselves. This is the final psychological inversion. For years, the industry has defined power as presence, being seen, being booked, being everywhere. But legacy doesn't work that way. Legacy accumulates in the negative space in the moments where restraint is chosen over reflex. The star begins selecting, not accepting. Conversations shift from when to why, from availability to alignment, from urgency to longevity. And here, what Hollywood slowly realizes, too late to reverse. The pause has changed the negotiation table. Because someone who can walk away without announcing it holds a different kind of leverage, not contractual, not financial. Psychological. Studios don't fear talent leaving, there's always more talent. What they fear is talent that no longer needs the system to validate its pace. That kind of gravity can't be managed with parking spots or schedules. Years later, when the star returns, because they always do, it's on different terms, shorter commitments, more control, fewer concessions. The system adapts around them, not the other way around. And no one ever mentions the parking spot. But everyone remembers when it disappeared. Because that was the day Hollywood quietly tried to rewrite gravity. And discovered it doesn't always get the final word.